Jeffrey, Paul, hi! I'm still kind of in my weird situation, I guess. Hopefully I'm gonna figure it out soon, but it's well, I wish I could kind of get some answers.
Welcome back, Nuggets. This mother clucker's got some thoughts. Let's ruffle some feathers and get into the video. And if you would like to support my baby chick of a channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype this video if you can, and go check out my other videos while you're here. My Nuggets. TikTok has folded. They've settled at the 11th hour, mere hours before they were about to face jury selection. And what they agreed to settle to is a landmark lawsuit about deliberately addicting children to their platform. Before we get into it, if you are new to this case and you're not familiar with everything, I've actually done a from beginning all the way through with multiple updates to this point. So I will link the first video below. I wonder if it should even have its own little playlist. It might be easier to find things. So let me tell you exactly what happened and why this matters. And right before all of this unfolded, Eugenia made her first appearance in months since all of this started going down on none other than Jeffree Star's live stream. So we will talk about everything. Let's get into it. So let me tell you exactly what happened and why this matters. On Tuesday, January the 27th, jury selection was about to begin for the lawsuit that everybody's been talking about. And of course, Eugenia is not actually involved in this lawsuit. She is not suing, nor is she being sued. She was being used as an exhibit named personally in all of the discovery documents and was used as a kind of poster child for what conditions can do to vulnerable minds. But right as jury selection is about to begin, we've got Meta there, we've got YouTube there, all preparing to defend themselves, and right at that point, TikTok decides to settle. This is actually following suit from a week ago where Snap decided to settle as well. Regarding the settlement terms, this is all still completely confidential. This is really kind of breaking news, so it hasn't even appeared in court documents yet that I can show you. But I'm still planning on doing my video on each of the platforms, and I think this is a really great place to start because now we've got settlements happening, and then we can follow through with the actual ones that stay, if they stay in the court cases. No dollar amount has been disclosed, but I think the timing really tells you everything. They've essentially said by settling at the absolute last possible second that it's not what they wanted to do. It's that they could not possibly let a jury see the evidence that they've been hiding. Now, if you've been watching my updates, you'll know that I've been a little bit frustrated because every single piece of evidence, every discovery document, all of it has been going into an automatic seal where everything's redacted and then it takes time for the judge to release these documents. The good news with TikTok settling at the moment is that obviously it's kind of an admission of guilt in a way, kind of. But the bad news is we're probably not going to see the discovery documents released that pertain directly to Eugenia because now there is a settlement. It's possible that there's NDAs going on, and I'm going to get into all of the potentials that are going on, but bear with me. So the plaintiff, what's happened? We don't know a massive amount about this plaintiff. In fact, all we actually have is that she was a 19-year-old woman, now turned 20, I believe, identified as KGM. According to what we do know, this young woman started using social media at age 10. Age 10. And I know that I have a lot of millennials and older in my audience, but just can you imagine? We didn't have that option just because it just didn't exist. But can you even begin to put your mind into using social media at the age of 10? According to documents, her mother tried to block her from the apps, tried to protect her, but couldn't. Now, I don't know exactly what this looks like. I don't know how forceful this mother was. I don't know what sort of disciplinary measures were put in place. I don't have any of that information. All that we hear is that this plaintiff was using it from a young age and the parent couldn't intervene for whatever reason. The argument being that the platforms were designed to be too easy to access and too hard to resist. KGM claims that she developed compulsive use from what the lawsuit calls, quote, addictive design and, quote, constant notifications, that she was pushed into what the complaint describes as, quote, self-destructive feedback loops. The result being claimed as depression, anxiety, body dysmorphia, and self-exiting thoughts. But here's the critical part. The lawsuit doesn't just say social media made her sad. It argues these outcomes were a result of deliberate design choice, that TikTok, Meta, Snapchat, and YouTube intentionally built their platforms to hook children to maximize their profits. There was a quote from the complaint. Plaintiffs are not merely the collateral damage of defendants' products. They are direct victims of the intentional product design choices made by each defendant. They are the intended targets of the harmful features that push them into self-destructive feedback loops. So basically what they're saying is that's not an accident. That's not a, oops, kids got sad. They're claiming it as literal engineered harm. And under all of this scrutiny, TikTok decided that they'd rather pay her an undisclosed sum than let a jury hear the evidence proving why their discovery is correct. What do you think about that? Because on the surface of it, it's like, okay, a lot of people even before the internet were experiencing depression, anxiety, body dysmorphia, and other self-exiting thoughts. So I feel like, as a generation that didn't quite grow up as young as this with the internet, it's like, yeah, so a lot of people experience that. How could you possibly take such kind of broad-reaching symptoms and then prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a company is responsible for it? But basically what they're saying is that discovery was so strong, TikTok and Snap are like, yeah, no, we out. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to tangle with it. We are fairly confident that we are either going to fail or have so much leaked to the public that we don't want getting out that it's just not financially worth it for us. How does that make you feel? Because it makes me feel a certain kind of way. Editing Vera here, I couldn't help myself. I needed to do a little bit more digging into KGM's aspect of the lawsuit. Now, this is obviously very in-depth. This is going to be a little bit more of an overview. I just wanted to determine what it was that they were trying to say had harmed KGM and how much information and input did the mother have since she was brought up in this. I found an interesting response from YouTube and TikTok defendants saying, and quote, the YouTube and TikTok defendants assert third-party fault as an affirmative defense, alleging that plaintiff KGM's mental health challenges are attributed, at least in part, to the acts of third parties, including 1, plaintiff's sister's condition, 2, peers at school talking about harm, 3, bullying from peers and teachers at school, 4, her mother's depression, 5, family discord and psychosocial trauma, and 6, plaintiff's physical assaults. Now, I did have to censor a couple of words in there, I do apologize. So this is why I say it's kind of interesting that they're claiming these things that I think a lot of people have, regardless of social media, and then to point out contributing factors. Like, for TikTok to fold under this, it seems like it would have been an easy one to get around. And there's more, actually. So then I found another exhibit. This was under KGM's mother's deposition. It's a quote from that. Quote, KGM's mother only learned of the dangers of social media from a 60 Minutes program long after her daughter had been using the apps. She testified that had she known of the harms earlier, she would have never given KGM a phone and things would be different. Now, this is interesting because this to me says that this mother does feel like she had an element of control over her daughter's exposure to social media. Now, if we trace back saying that KGM is 20 right now, some sources say 19, some sources say 20, but let's say 20. That means if she started using social media at 10, that puts us at 2016. You want to tell me that people weren't aware of the effects of social media in 2016? I'm not a lawyer, and I feel like I could argue this very well. I think to claim ignorance from the mother's behalf, to say, well, I didn't see warnings, I didn't know this was dangerous, the company should have told us. I feel like there's a certain amount of initiative that if we're getting to this level, if it's that bad, why wasn't that sought? So again, my point being, not to slam the mother here, not at all, but my point being, this seems like a straightforward kind of situation, which I will get to my point very shortly. And finally, this is from another exhibit, and I quote, ByteDance insists that it could not be liable because KGM already suffered mental health harms before she began using TikTok, which is fair because in 2016, TikTok was not commonplace. She was probably more on Instagram and things like that. However, the question of whether subsequent TikTok use contributed to or increased such harms is a factual question for the jury. The complicated factual question of whether TikTok's design features were a substantial cause of any of KGM's harms cannot be decided by way of summary judgment. So this is basically saying this needs to go to a jury to decide whether these questions are fact or not. That must have been enough doubt in the judge's mind to go, yeah, let's give it to the jury, which I can understand. But you can see my point, right? It seems like there's a lot of argument points that TikTok could very easily point to. So why fold? Why settle? And it really makes me think that it's not about this case at all. It makes me think that this is going to be a tactic that they just intend on doing for everybody. And it really makes me think that they're trying to hide something. So what this settlement means, now you might be wondering, like, okay, TikTok settled with one person. So what? What does that mean? Here's why this matters. It was actually one of 3 trials going on. It's just KGM's case is the one that has been forefronted. It's what we call a bellwether trial. Think of KGM's case like a test case, a trial run, right? One lawsuit selected from hundreds of similar cases to see how juries respond to the evidence and what kind of damages would be awarded. Now, this kind of thing is really common in things like the MDL, the multi-district litigation, because remember that is different to a class action lawsuit, where a class action lawsuit is a group of individuals coming together as one entity to sue or seek damages under one lawsuit. The multi-district litigation is more like a whole bunch of little groups or individuals all having the same complaint, but they're all going to be handled and settled and judged separately. So in the case of this MDL being against all of the major social media platforms with very, very similar, collated discovery and similar complaints, it's in essence kind of saving resources to put forward an indicative case, like an average representation of everybody's case, to see how jurors will react, basically. Basically, the purpose of bellwether trials is to establish precedent. And especially in a case like this, where we really haven't seen anything like this before. We've never seen social media companies held to account like this before. So after a few of these test cases, both sides know, both sides being the plaintiffs doing the suing and the defendants, which are the social media companies, will find out, one, how juries view the evidence, two, what the companies might be liable for, and three, approximate damage amounts if they're found at fault. Then what happens to all those other hundreds of cases? Most of them will basically be settled based on what the bellwether outcomes are. So if TikTok had have gone to trial and a jury awarded KGM, say like $5 million, they'd be looking at paying similar amounts to hundreds of other plaintiffs with nearly identical cases. And I do apologize in the background there. My boys are having a bit of a crow party. It's what they do. They like to be part of it. And that's why they settled. It's not out of generosity or a good heart. It's not wanting to do the right thing. They've settled to avoid establishing a precedent that would cost them hundreds of millions, possibly billions, in the subsequent cases. So they're determining that this is going to be much more financially beneficial for them to just do the payouts. And by settling confidentially the way that they have, they get to avoid a jury verdict that basically sets a baseline for other cases. They get to keep the settlement amount secret so that other plaintiffs, because remember, they're all operating individually with different lawyers, and in that way they won't know what to ask for. They prevent their internal documents from being shown publicly in trial, which this mother clucker has a feeling that that's what this is about. Because of all of those sealed documents, they don't want them unsealed. And also what I think is their number one priority, they're going to stop their executives from testifying under oath. And that is particularly important when you remember what has been said about Eugenia in this case. It has been discovered by the plaintiffs that TikTok actively managed and promoted Eugenia despite knowing what she represented in the communities and what she represented as part of her condition. And to have an executive, it was bad enough that there are testimonies from employees, but to have an executive sit on the stand under oath and say that they promoted and managed, they financially benefited by putting their own users at risk for putting this person in front of them. That would be catastrophic. It's no wonder that is what they're trying to avoid. So essentially, 2 out of the 4 platforms looked at the evidence that they had to defend and decided, yeah, no, absolutely not. We're paying our way out of this. So what's still coming? Here's where it kind of gets interesting. TikTok and Snapchat might have bought their way out of this trial, but they haven't necessarily escaped all of it. So what's happening right now? Meta, and that covers Facebook and Instagram, it's just Meta as the umbrella company, and YouTube are still going to trial, though they didn't settle, which means we're about to get a very public look at how these platforms operate. And by the way, the exhibit lists are already starting to come out unredacted. None of the TikTok stuff that we want to see, none of the Eugenia related stuff. I'm still checking every day. But there are some really damning documents coming out and are public knowledge at this point. The trial itself, so this is the bellwether trial, just the initial test cases, is expected to last 6 to 8 weeks. Once jurors are selected, they will see thousands and thousands of pages of internal documents, expert witness testimonies, and perhaps even most interestingly, Mark Zuckerberg is testifying. He's actually due to be there in person under oath in the second week of February. And then we'll also be seeing high up executives of Instagram and Facebook also taking the stand in the coming weeks. This isn't a deposition behind closed doors, which is what we saw with the TikTok employee talking about Eugenia being a barn burner. This is public testimony in a trial with international media coverage. They're going to have to defend internal documents that allegedly show they knew they were harming kids and did it anyway for their profit. Are you excited about that, my nuggets? I am. I am very interested to see what Mark Zuckerberg has to say. And that's actually just the state court cases, so the 3 bellwether cases. In June, there's actually a federal bellwether trial that is to represent the school districts involved in this, because if you remember, there's a whole host of different entities involved in this, and some of them are major groups like school districts, some of them are just individuals. So this is going to be a big one. School districts are basically arguing that social media addiction has caused substantial and financially burdensome interference with school districts, county, and municipal operations, that they've had 1, hire additional mental health staff, 2, confiscate phones during class, 3, repair property damage from TikTok challenges, believable, and 4, divert resources to address social media harms. And TikTok is still a defendant in that case. So is YouTube, so is Meta, so is Snapchat. So while they've settled for the individual plaintiff bellwether cases, they haven't yet settled for those federal level ones. And on top of that, TikTok faces lawsuits in more than a dozen states individually. There are thousands of personal injury cases still pending. This settlement that they've just done was only a single escape route, but the walls are absolutely still closing in on them. Okay, so now let me explain why these lawsuits are different. My nuggets. I really love doing these legal ones. I think they're so much fun to dig into. I've become very passionate about reading legal documents. So, in essence, the social media companies have been hiding behind 2 legal shields. So, one I've covered before, it's called Section 230, and it's part of the Communications Decency Act from 1996. It basically says that platforms aren't liable for content posted by users. If someone posts something harmful, you sue the person who posted it, not the platform hosting it. This has basically protected social media companies for decades. As I mean, 96 is essentially when the internet became mainstream and, millennials started climbing on board. Yes, we did. Anyone remember ICQ? I was there. The other shield that they've been hiding behind is the First Amendment, where they're kind of saying that platforms argue that they have a constitutional right to curate content, that algorithmic recommendations are a form of free speech protected by the First Amendment. Now, this is an interesting one for me because in Australia, we don't really have this kind of thing. This is an American thing, and I'd be really interested to hear any takes from US lawyer nuggets. Yes, you've come through for me in the past. I would appreciate it again. But that sounds a little flimsy to me because I feel like I understand free speech, but algorithmic recommendations being considered free speech? That's collating data based on what you've been viewing to feed you more. I don't know. That seems a little fuzzy to me, but tell me what you think. I'd be very interested. But in essence, this lawsuit that we're talking about bypasses both of these. Basically, what their argument is that it's not about the content, it's about the product design. The lawsuits are basically arguing that features like infinite scrolling, the doom scrolling, variable reward structures which mimic the slot machine effect, which has been well documented to be highly addictive, the constant notifications, the algorithmic rabbit holes, the beauty filters, the design, all of the design choices that maximize engagement and keeping you stuck in a loop engaging with their product. And in previous videos, we even discovered that TikTok on some models of phones are even able to do things like hide the clock. That's horrendous. It's just everything is designed to keep you locked in, to keep you engaging, keep you consuming, keep you moving through their platform. And that's what they're arguing, not the content. And then you might be saying, well, Eugenia is the content, right? So what's the big deal? The big deal with Eugenia is she's being used as a bit of a poster child because they had been managing and promoting her, and because of their algorithm pushing things like her. You know, like I said, I only follow Eugenia on TikTok, and now that's all I see. That kind of content, those kind of people, you know, that kind of condition is just pushed. So the algorithm has latched because I haven't given it much option onto that and is pushing it. That's the problem. This is not about content moderation. This is about how the product itself, the platform itself, is engineered. A quote from the complaint: borrowing heavily from the behavioral and neurobiological techniques used by slot machines and exploited by the cigarette industry, defendants deliberately embedded in their products an array of design features aimed at maximizing youth engagement to drive advertising revenue. Section 230 protects platforms from liability from what users post, but it doesn't protect them from liability for how they designed the product to be addictive. That's the argument, and apparently it's working. So in November 2025, this is a new judge's name that we haven't seen before, Judge Carolyn Cull. She's been overseeing the state cases. She ruled that there's a valid legal dispute about whether platform design features were a substantial factor in causing harm. She did strike down some of the claims that were about third-party content, which are actually covered by Section 230, but she said that the question of whether the features like infinite scrolling could contribute to harming users, that's something a jury should decide. Isn't that interesting? So she's saying that it's not covered by Section 230 and it's not covered by the First Amendment, so let's see what the jurors say. Because if a jury decides, yes, you deliberately designed this to addict children, then Section 230 doesn't save them. And it's kind of, I'm going to do a big deep dive on this because this is a massive, massive point. This is essentially the big tobacco playbook. And if you're old enough, you will actually remember this playing out. It was a really big thing in the 90s. And something that came out of it in Australia is that now there has to be warning labels on everything. And you can't actually, like, if you go to a place that sells cigarettes, they're not on display. They're all behind little rolly doors that you can't see through, whereas before everything was just out on display. So it's interesting. But basically, in the 90s, tobacco companies hid behind these similar arguments, basically like personal choice, individual responsibility, First Amendment rights to advertise. But when internal documents proved that they knew cigarettes were addictive and harmful, and they deliberately targeted children and then lied about it, the lawsuit succeeded. The 1998 Master Settlement Agreement required cigarette companies to pay billions in healthcare costs and severely restricted marketing to minors. I don't even think those words should be severely restricted. It should be just removed, but never mind, this is the world we live in. And when you think about it, these social media cases are actually following the exact same path. It's no different. Sure, it's not a physical substance going into your body, but it's a toxin for your mind all the same. And that kind of research has been going on for quite a few years that are proving that depression rates and all manner of mental health issues are on the rise because of things like social media. Internal documents showing that they know about the harms, evidence of deliberately targeting children, research buried to protect profits, that is the same as the big tobacco playbook. And just like big tobacco, when faced with actually defending that in front of a jury, they'd rather settle because it's more beneficial financially and reputationally to just settle. Okay, so this is where Eugenia comes in. Now, a little sequence of events happen that I think are quite interesting. It's all about the timing, my nuggets. The timing is interesting with everything. So, on Monday, the 26th, Eugenia actually appeared on a Jeffree Star live stream. Now, this is the first live appearance that we've seen her do since all of this went down. So, since the 29th of June, we've not seen her except for some paparazzi style shots of her visiting Disney. And then the next day, TikTok settles. Now, this could be a coincidence. It absolutely could be. But Eugenia has been radio silent. Now, let's have a little look at this live. These clips are kind of a compilation of me trying to find things without weird pictures all over them. So I've done some weird edits, and I've also found some clips with some weird edits. So if things just don't look a bit right, I'm just hiding, like, one of them had their dogs as watermarks over the top, and I don't actually know who the original creator was that did that because nobody's crediting them. So I will credit these two clips that I'm going to show as a combination of RealisticO, again, an absolute legend, and also Mick Jagger's Star as well.
I so would
You
right
guys,
now.
Eugenia never went anywhere. All you fucking weirdos making up 100 rumors about my friend. She's been right here.
Oh no, are they doing that again, guys? I'm alive. Oh my gosh. Happy party again. It's like, if I could, I'd be sending that. I'd be sending that fly love, whatever new gifts they have.
How come she can't go on camera? She's in jail right now, you guys. She snuck
Yeah,
a phone
sorry,
from the cartel.
everybody. That's the thing. It's like, if I wasn't in jail, then I would definitely
Yeah,
be
she's
on
in
camera,
TikTok jail,
but-
you guys. She can't gift. She can't go on camera.
So I'm just, you guys could just see my little picture, I guess.
So pretty much the same old Eugenia that we left off from. We're very excited about praising Jeffree. We just want to be giving gifts, and we're saying we're still alive. And unfortunately, what we were seeing from the TMZ articles, that she clearly hasn't actually been using this time to be getting help, which is such a shame because we're talking about, 7 months at this point, and some real work could have been started in that time. And again, I don't know if a full recovery is possible at this point, but it would have been so great to see something, right?
You guys, they won't let her go live. Trust me, she would be live every day.
Yeah, trust me, if I could, I would, you guys. Like, I'm hopefully gonna figure it out soon, but it's like, well, I wish I could kind of get some answers.
So I don't know how true this is. I think it's very clear that she's been demonetized, but not banned, right? Her account wasn't terminated because we did see her in Jeffree's live chatting. Whether or not that was her, we don't know, but it was at least her account doing it. So the account was still active, which is why I proposed this kind of weird holding pattern while TikTok navigated the lawsuit to see where they'd wind up. And it almost makes me wonder if for some reason she did get some sort of communication that she was okay to start going on live. Notice she's not showing her face here. I wonder if TikTok said you can start doing this, but these are your restrictions. And it almost makes me wonder if TikTok said to her that we need to see some manner of health journey. Do you think she would do it for TikTok? Do you think she would do it for her BFF, Jeffrey, so that she can go back to giving him galaxies and all that kind of rubbish? Do you think that would be enough? I almost, I don't know how I feel about that thought. I feel like it's a possibility that she might get her act together for that, but I don't know how I would feel if that's what it took. Like, I want to see her get better, don't get me wrong, but for Jeffrey, I don't know. Anyway.
First message I got, it's like maybe things are looking a little bit more hopeful finally.
Okay. Well, yeah. Show me a screenshot. I'd love to see where their vibe's at. And I'll be in Vegas with the heads of TikTok soon, so I'll be yelling at them for you.
Oh my gosh, Jeffrey, I love you. I would like.
Eugenia, have you written back and like started this motion, or what's the?
No, it's so weird. You know, I actually replied to. I replied like that day, and then I just followed up like a couple. I think it was last Tuesday because I didn't hear back again, and now I'm kind of like, maybe I should email again. Like, I hate to be annoying, but I'm like.
So it does sound like there is some manner of movement going on there, some sort of communication, which is also why I say this is not a normal kind of restriction or ban that TikTok would do. This is not the same sort of duration. And this, to me, confirms that it's to do with the lawsuit. And it almost makes me wonder, because it does raise questions, doesn't it? Like, for example, if TikTok has decided that the way they're going to handle all of these lawsuits moving forward is to just settle, then they know that the discovery documents surrounding Eugenia are not going to be made public, right? So they would have that kind of security within themselves. But would they allow her to be monetized? Because even though you could just say, well, they could just keep settling, would it be wise to open themselves up to a live stream incident that similar of Mother's Day, which is kind of what sparked all of this? It leaves me with so many questions. There's so many paths that sitting at this point in time all spread out in different directions with different possibilities, and it will be fascinating to see how things move. But what is clear right now, one, she is able to go live, at least on Jeffrey's stream. Two, she's not showing her face while doing it. And three, she's definitely not monetized at this point in time.
And if you guys want to make up another conspiracy, you can say that her mom is creating an AI voice and talking for her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. For all you girls out there that can't believe anything, normal and real is happening, yeah.
It's so, I don't know if people are like saying crazy things again. It's so funny. Like, actually, I think it was, I'm like, this morning I was kind of on my FYP, and then I saw a couple of weird things. I was like, wait, are people saying this again? Like,
they're so bored, baby. They can't stop. That's the unfortunate problem.
And I mean, in this day and age, that is possible. I don't necessarily buy that is what's happening, but you've got to admit that's possible, right? It has been very easy to mimic humans' voices, like specific humans' voices, for quite a while now. That it could absolutely very easily be somebody, maybe not Deb, but somebody operating her account for her and being able to go live with her voice. Being able to go live with her image would be a lot more difficult with AI, but even that is getting much more convincing these days. So, like, you can't sit there and call us ridiculous for factoring that might be a possibility, no matter how probable or improbable it might be. This is the world we live in. So, yeah, she was on there for a while, but it did get a little bit, Eugenia-like, you know what I mean, when she's on a live with Jeffrey. So this is really interesting timing, right? When you consider the court case as a whole, the Mother's Day incident happened, then a news article was released about it, then the plaintiffs discovered that had happened, and then they requested more discovery docs, and then Eugenia got demonetized and kind of, I don't know, limited in function of her account. And now TikTok is deciding to settle, and right before they announce their settlement, Eugenia goes live. It's weird when you look at it all together, and it absolutely could just be one hell of a coincidence. It really could, but it's just, I don't know, things connect too closely. And to hear that she has been having communications with them, and perhaps maybe they said she could go live on a friend's account or whatever, it's just but yeah, it's one hell of a timeline. So I'll be watching to see if she does make a return, because Jeffrey at some point in this live stream did make mention that she would return in a couple of weeks. Now, Jeffrey has done this before, so, you know, not really a reliable narrator. I don't think we need to take everything Jeffrey says at face value, but I think it is going to be very interesting to see what path these turn of events take from here on out. And my nuggets, I am going to be watching so closely. And I'll let you know. There will be more updates coming. This is like my new favorite topic of all time, TikTok lawsuit. Okay, so just a quick summation. Here's where we are. TikTok has bought their way out of one single trial, a bellwether trial, hours before facing jury selection. Meta and YouTube are still going to trial right now, and it's going to be happening through February and into March. And we're going to see all of their internal documents. Super fun. With Zuckerberg himself testifying under oath. The school district's bellwether case is still coming in June. And that is with all of their evidence about Project School Kid, which I covered in a previous video, targeting children and engineering addiction. As for all the other thousands of cases, they're still pending. They're going to be waiting to see how all of this plays out and handling it from there. The settlement isn't the end. I know it sounds like it's going to be the end, but it's really not. It's just the beginning of the end. What it is proof that when forced to actually defend their actions in court, TikTok and Snap would rather just pay to make it go away. The walls are closing in, my nuggets. This is only the beginning. So let me know if you have any insights, if you are an American nugget, if you have any questions, if you have any information, you can, I think it looks like YouTube is blocking all links that you send me in comments. So if you want to send me a link, please DM me on TikTok or Instagram, and that will be the best way to get me information if you have it. But yeah, I guess stay tuned, sit tight, watch this space, because it's about to get interesting. But if you're still here listening to me, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. And an extra big thank you to all of my cluckers who support on YouTube memberships and Patreon. You make my world go round. You are so wonderful. If you would also like to support, and you can, I have a whole bunch of members only content on both of those platforms waiting for you, and I'm about to start some more, which is super fun. But that is all the clocks I have left to give. Stay golden, my little nuggets, and I'll catch you next time.
Hey! I'm gonna go watch another video. Let's go!